Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang saranang gacchami. So when you're giving a gift of service, to whom might one give service? The scriptures frequently mention giving service to your mother and father, and that's an important topic. I'm not going to go into that per se much here, but that's certainly in a very important category. You could do service to the Sangha, elders in your family, including your parents, your spouse, your dependents, maybe your extended family. You might do acts of service for friends, for your pets, for the community, so acts of service for wildlife. And you can think of examples for all of these. In my own life, I can think of acts of service in all of these. There's tremendous benefit in service, and there are some downsides. The immediate benefits are pretty obvious to the recipient. You know, they get some kind of needs met. A little less obvious are some other benefits that the recipient gets. Just the rejoicing in being met by a world that's kind and generous to them due to your actions. They get to enjoy a sense of gratitude. They get to feel like they're part of this world. They're not abandoned or neglected. For some folks, the service that someone else renders to them could be part of their identity. And again, that's for better or worse. All of these could go most of these could go either direction. But like, you're the fact that you did some service for someone in your family can reinforce their sense of family identity. Or sense of someone in your shared housing would reinforce that sense of, yeah, we're in this together. Or doing some service in your neighborhood could reinforce a sense of, neighborhood identity or the value that you have for each other. So you could be reinforcing that kind of usually wholesome, could be unwholesome, sense of this is who we are together. That maybe you cleared some branches away from someone else's sidewalk, or you took in the trash can for someone who is disabled, or whatever. I just by coincidence am naming things that I have very typically done myself. Oh, it's raining. I run go take in the trash can of the neighbor across the street so they don't end up with a, when it was emptied and the lid was left open, so they don't have to deal with that. So those are some of the benefits to them. What are the benefits to you when you do an act of service to any of these people of all these various relationships to you? You are acting on a kind of a selflessness. Like if you have selfishness in the forefront of your mind, it's very difficult to do something for your community, for your pets even, for your elders and so forth, when you're cultivating selfishness. But when you choose to set aside what would be easy for you, what would be convenient for you, and do something for others, do an act of service for others, then you have cultivated your own character. You've cultivated a quality of mind that happens to go in harmony with the direction of enlightenment, of letting go, of not seeing yourself as all important, but seeing value of others, or acting on perhaps gratitude towards others. In Buddhism, gratitude is a little bit different from the usual Western culture idea of gratitude. It's really a very strong pay it back and pay it forward kind of idea. If you've never caught it, Venerable Thanissaro wrote a brilliant essay on gratitude. I think the word katanyu. like repaying your gratitude is in the title of that. He really breaks it, analyzes it quite beautifully, thoroughly in there, in a way that's very inspiring to do actions in the world that are either paying back your benefactors or kind of paying it forward in the world because of what you've been given, or even showing appreciation to yourself for your own past good deeds. So that's a big benefit of doing acts of service to others. There's the satisfaction, perhaps, not in every case, but in many cases, when you do an act of service, an act of selfless giving, then you get to see some impact of that. And so then you can get a bit of a satisfaction that, oh, you did this, and this other situation was the result. You see the before, you see the after, and you get to have that kind of sense of efficacy. You're empowered that you could do something good that helped others. The impact of your efforts did something beneficial in the world, and it's for me, when I've done something beneficial, that I can really see the change that I brought to another being or multiple other beings, then it lifts me up. Whether it's setting out water for birds to drink and bathe in, cleaning that container up and setting it out again, or whether it is the satisfaction of clearing away debris. There was one time there was a big storm in my neighborhood, and I cleared away a tree branch that had fallen. It was an enormous branch. It was a branch as big as some trees, and it took every bit of strength of my body to grab a hold of that thing and really use my weight in a way to maneuver it off the street, off the sidewalk, fully into a yard, so that traffic could pass on that street. Otherwise, people were having to drive into the other lane to get around it. And I felt like an ant picking up a giant crumb. I was so tiny next to that big, big limb. And when I walked past later, when the limb had been fully removed, I had this happiness, just looking at that spot. I noticed 6 years later, walking past, even this is at a place I used to live, even visiting that neighborhood again many years later. So now we're talking, let's say if it happened around 2005. So even walking past there just a few years ago, again, just going past that location, I had a little bit of that's the place I moved that limb. I did that thing for the sake of community. So this is not a matter of pride. It's not a matter of unwholesome self-congratulations. It's about having that uplift, and that it really does kind of build a little bit of self-esteem. Really, it just gives a sense of, ooh, this is where I did something nice, and then that niceness is what almost haunts that place. That niceness is just hanging in the air there for me to walk into again and again. When one is doing an act of service, you get good karma. And that good karma could be something that manifests very quickly, even on the spot, in some improved conditions. It could manifest later. For example, I thought nobody had seen it, but apparently people had seen me take down the emptied trash can of the disabled neighbor. And when I was out of town, somebody took mine down. Put mine away at the house. It's a little bit of trouble. These bins in Charlotte are kind of big and not easy to manage, a little unwieldy. And so kind of, taking it away from the street to the house is important, actually, because if anybody should be annoying and complain about it, you could actually get a warning and then later get an expense, a fee, a ticket for leaving it there. Being out of town apparently is no excuse. So so you never know when that good karma might ripen in someone else helping you, or I like to think of our deeds coming back to us, like I don't know if any of you folks have had this happen. It's kind of a thing in America among children, at least in my youth, where someone would write a word like "kick me" on a piece of paper and then tape it on your back. And then all morning you don't know why the other kids come and kick you. Right? Well, I think of our karma as like a psychic kick me sign or a psychic love me sign that's over your head. It says, did good or did bad. Do good to this one, do bad to that one, that all the angels can see. and maybe tell people, do something nice for that one. Oh, don't do something nice for that one. Really, I think that having a lot of good karma under your belt of all sorts of little deeds, good acts of service to the community and to individuals, family, pets, whatever, I think that there are many ways that these come back karmically with improved conditions over what you might have had. And perhaps a better rebirth, better conditions in a future life. One time somebody asked the Buddha why, what was this exact question about why some monks found it very difficult to live the holy life physically, in terms of, how much people were giving them gifts and food. And he said, oh yeah, it was based on their past life, whether they themselves were generous. So, this kind of thing can follow us actually quite some time. I alluded to this, that it's not always good. This business of giving service. And I'm going to quote scripture, if I can find it among my screenshot note. This is Anguttara Nikaya 3.78. So in the Book of Threes, Ananda, are all precepts and observances, lifestyles, and spiritual paths fruitful when taken as the essence? So are all good, ostensibly wholesome, like considered usually to be wholesome, are all these beautiful actions always good? Ananda answered, this is no simple matter, sir. Well, then, Ananda, break it down. Ananda answered, well, take the case of someone who cultivates precepts and observances, a lifestyle and a spiritual path, taking this as the essence. If unskillful qualities grow while skillful qualities decline, that's not fruitful. However, if unskillful qualities decline while skillful qualities grow, that is fruitful. And the Buddha approved it, and then the Buddha then praised his wisdom. And why do I bring that up? Because not all acts of service are going to be wholesome. And how are you going to know? You're going to have to know your own mind. You're going to have to know context. You're going to have to be able to assess this. If you consider the Buddha's advice to Rahula when he was very young, about reflecting on actions, and this is the Ambalatika Rahula Vara Sutta. This is in the Middle Length Discourses. So it's the advice to Rahula at Ambalatika. An old translation said at the Mango Stone. I don't seem to have copied down the exact number in the Middle Length Discourses. It's in there somewhere. Might have been something like 61. I'm not sure. He said that you should reflect on any actions that you're going to do to make sure that they're not going to be unwholesome. Or if you're engaged in actions, continually watch for any indications that they might be unwholesome. Or if you've completed actions, again, review whether they're unwholesome despite your previous efforts. If at any point you find that your actions are or will be unwholesome, don't do them or stop. And or if you've already done them, talk to a fellow in the spiritual life and resolve to do better in future. The same advice he gave also about speech and even actions of mind. I'm not going to go into the whole sutta, But I just want to point out that when it comes to doing acts of service for others, these are could be verbal, but also a lot of times we're going to be talking about physical actions. He said deeds of body, speech, and mind should be done only after repeated checking, just like you would check out your own face in a mirror. You should check, when you want to do an act with the body, you should check on that same deed. Does this act with the body that I want to do lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? Is it unskillful with suffering as its outcome and result? And then if so, then to the best of your ability, don't do it. But if you find that it's not hurting in any way, it's skillful with happiness as its outcome and result, then, he said, you should do such a deed. So again, then when you're in the middle of doing it, you keep looking for input as to whether really is it a good idea, really is it wholesome, really is it causing harm, or is it really harmless and helpful? And if it turns out that it was not a good idea, again, you should talk to somebody about it and restrain in future. If it turns out that this act with the body that I have done did not lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both, it is skillful with happiness as its outcome and result, then Rahula, you should live in rapture and joy because of this, training day and night in skillful qualities. And then again, the same thing about speech. Reflect before, during, after, to stop yourself at any point if you decide it might be unwholesome, hurtful, or to continue as long as it seems like it's not going to hurt you or others. And again, reflect on it later. He pointed out, and then again, this other bit about mind, and at the end of that sutta, he went on to say that anybody who has, here's the quote, all the ascetics and Brahmins, so all the spiritual people of the past, future, and present, who purify their physical, verbal, and mental actions, do so in this way after repeatedly checking. So Rahula, you should train yourself like this. I will purify my physical, verbal, and mental actions after repeatedly checking. So, you want to do an act of service to the Sangha or elders or your dependents or spouse or extended family, friends, your community, your pets, wildlife, or just some random act out there that's for the good, then good to reflect. Have this circumspection, have this discretion. Don't get some kind of rule in your head that doing this thing is always good. And then just foolishly stride ahead with it, thinking this is always good. That's not how the mind works. That's not how the heart works. It's not how the world works. Circumstances shift and change. Duties shift and change. Your ability to do something shifts and changes. Another person's needs or what brings them well-being shift and change as well. There are a lot of moving parts in this life. Every little action is filled with many, many moving parts. So we want to bring wisdom to all of our efforts. And, when you've completed some kind of well-intended act of service, it could be pretty painful if it wasn't received the way you had intended, if it's not received well, if it was taken as an insult, if it was taken as an act of treachery disguised as a good deed that you really were doing. That would hurt. Be very disappointing. You could even end up kind of bitter about that. So it'd be very, very good to be highly skilled with this business of repeated reflecting, to make sure that we're developing our wisdom in the process of all of these things that we're doing. I found that, when we're talking about the middle path of the Buddha, the image of the middle path, for a long time, really just, I had trouble with it as a kind of a metaphor. Like, in the middle of what? I just couldn't quite visualize it. And in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, where the Buddha introduced this idea in his first sermon of that middle way, he gave two extremes of plunging into the sense pleasures or self-abuse, self-mortification. So you have these two extremely wrong paths. And then he gave his eightfold path of living in a way that brings spiritual development as this other option. And how on earth is that in the middle between these? It's not. It's not a middle. So where is it? Well, think of a triangle instead and put the Buddha's middle way up here. Like you have the wrong way in one direction, the wrong way in another. And then if you have like the top of a triangle as the middle way, that is the way that's none of the above, the way that's the alternative to ways that you know are not good, then that works for me visually. And I found it works with a lot of things, all kinds of spiritual ideas, such as, let's say, you know that pride isn't good. You know that humiliation isn't good. Well, humbleness is that third option that would be above the other two. You see how that kind of triangle of image might work? There's another one would be attachment, aversion or indifference. And then just loving kindness is an option that doesn't hit any of those the wrong points. So it's another top of the triangle. Well, okay, so here we go with this one. At these acts of service, you have on the one hand giving out of a sense of obligation, giving out of a sense of kind of like a bitter giving where you kind of feel I have to do it, a giving of service that you're hating doing it. That's on one end. On the other end is not giving at all, doing no service whatsoever. I'll give you an example. I know a guy, and bless his heart, he's really trying to do spiritual development, but one time he confided to me that he was headed into into a gas station to pay for his gas, and there was a man on the ground who cried out that he'd been shot, and this friend of mine, he just walked over him and kept going because he didn't want to be bothered with some guy claiming to be shot, and claiming to be shot might be shocking to people in this location. I'm sitting here in Germany, but my part of town, happens. Happens. He walked over him. He felt a little bad about it later, and I said, you should feel bad. That's terrible. Okay, so I'm doing nothing, no service, doing service begrudgingly. And then there's doing service that brings uplift, joy, happiness. So that would be the top of the triangle for that, for those two extremes of not doing or doing in a way that's sort of burned out and begrudging. Sometimes people may be hesitant to do an act of service because they're trying to maintain something called boundaries. And I've heard a lot about boundaries, and I've learned a lot about boundaries myself and found them this idea out of psychology to be very beneficial. I think a more Buddhist way to approach so people have this idea of boundaries, and here's my very not specially educated way of defining this, but people talk about boundaries when they're referring to the need to take care of their own priorities, what's necessary in their own lives, and not let their care and concern for what others need to encroach on their actual personal needs, and to not enable bad behavior by other people, rather to help everybody to live their best lives. So sometimes when you do service for another person who doesn't really need it or is seeking it for unwholesome reasons, you can end up with some very tangled, difficult situations. That's why there's an old American, I believe it's an American saying that good fences make good neighbors. Like we have to have some kind of fence between oneself and others, or you can just have this kind of amorphous sense of this is what I need, this is what you need. Your needs are a little heavier than mine, so my needs should give way to your needs. And there can be a bit of a, again, modern psychology words, you can end up with a kind of a codependency where you're not able to see clearly. You can get wrapped up in some delusion about what is appropriate to be done. So I would like to propose another way of looking at what people nowadays call boundaries as simply the idea that one should act if and only if the results are wholesome. So going back to that scripture I quoted, the Buddha's advice to Rahula, the Ambalataka Rahulavada Sutta, only act if it's wholesome. If we maintain that as our priority, that we are not going to do any action of body or speech, and again of mind, but particularly in terms of acts of service, we're not going to do any actions of body or speech, any acts of service, unless the results are wholesome. Then I think we will be automatically fulfilling the concerns that are met with these ideas about boundaries. Doing service for others it's a kind of a subcategory of generosity in my opinion. Now, I looked in scripture trying to find exactly what Pali word is there for acts of service. I found more than one, unfortunately. I thought I could find the one word that refers to service, but there was a word for duties, there was a word for service to family and others, and one of the main words I found was, so here we see mata pitu upattahanan, and upattahana means going near. This is the automatic lookup on Sutta Central. Going near, keeping close to, presence, appearance, serving, waiting on, attendance, or even worshiping. So that's a really nice word for in reference to giving service to a benefactor, particularly, or especially people we can look up to, people in the holy life. Another word was Veyavacha. There's, let's see. So the Buddha gave a short sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 5.36, the numbered discourses 5.36, about timely gifts. And then he spoke a poem. The wise give at the right time, being bountiful and rid of stinginess. A religious donation at the right time to the noble ones, upright and poised, given with a clear and confident mind, is indeed abundant. Those who rejoice at that or do other services don't miss out on the offering. They too have a share in the merit. So you should give without holding back where a gift is very fruitful. To the good deeds of sentient beings, support them in the next world. That is, your good karma is waiting for you like a friend. So again, that is where we saw the word Veyavachang. Veyavacha meaning duty, service, or commission. That's where he said those, where he was saying those who rejoice at that or do other services. Don't miss out on the offering. They too have a share in the merit. There's where I mentioned one of these other words. I'm going to give the whole sutta. This is a short one in the Book of Threes of the Numbered Discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya 3.45. Because there are these three things prescribed by the wise, prescribed by good people. And by the way, that was Pandita Panyatani Sapurisa Panyataniti. So the Panditas and the Sapurisas, so the truly wise, the truly profoundly great people. What 3? Giving is prescribed by the wise, prescribed by the good people. 2, the going forth is prescribed by the wise, prescribed by good people. 3, attending upon one's mother and father is prescribed by the wise, prescribed by good people. These 3 things are prescribed by the wise, prescribed by good people. And then his poem, good people prescribe giving, harmlessness, self-control, and self-taming, caring for mother and father, and peaceful spiritual practitioners. Or different translations, service to one's mother and father and to the peaceful followers of the spiritual life. These are the deeds of the good which the wise person should pursue. The noble one, possessed of vision, goes to an auspicious world. So again, that was where we found the word upatana or upatana, going near, keeping close to, presence, appearance, serving, waiting on, attendance, or even worshiping of mother and father and of peaceful spiritual practitioners. So when people bring donations to the Ayyā Vihara or someplace that I'm visiting or whatever, they bring food or other necessities. I often talk about the power of their generosity, the power of their giving, how that what they're putting out there in the universe is for their own benefit. I go into detail about that. And I used to really kind of specially focus on the goodness of cutting off one's own clinging to the material possessions, and how that kind of letting go is so necessary and important on the spiritual path. You can see directly in the Four Noble Truths the importance of that. But in recent years, I've become so aware how a big part of what they have given is not only their renouncing of the funds to do that, or they're bringing up a lot of attentiveness to what they were doing, but the additional gift of their time, their effort. People's focus is incredibly scattered in a way that's exhausting. If only they have an internet connection, they have a whole world of possibilities to explore for pleasure, for education, for fun, for some kind of connecting. And that's just sitting right there in their house. There's the world of things right there in front of them, distracting them. Or going out into their city. There are endless distractions, opportunities of entertainment, and then so many other things they could be doing. They could be dining, they could be hanging out with friends, they could be seeing relatives, they could be doing work at their job, they could be doing other tasks so that they have freedom of time to go play and have fun. All kinds of ways of getting exercise and moving the body and just having some kind of pleasant experience or excitement. It's endless. This, I think most of our ancestors throughout most of the time spent an awful lot of their energy just trying to survive. Now we spend an awful lot of our energy trying to figure out how to do this life, because there's just so many endless possibilities every minute. I don't know about here in Germany, but if you just try to buy toothpaste in the States, you have 2 aisles of things to look through to decide. Fluoride, non-fluoride, mint, cinnamon, expensive, cheap, big, small. You might easily have 200 different types of toothpaste right there that you got to sort through. What takes your time and your attention your time and your attention is worth gold. And when people have chosen to put their time and attention into procuring what is needed for Sangha, for the ordained Sangha. And their time and attention to driving over there, their energy, their time, their attention, or of course to preparing whatever they put together, maybe in a form of gifts, maybe in a form of beautiful meals. I sometimes am moved almost to tears at the beauty with which people attend to the giving that they do to Sangha. Sometimes there's just the way they arrange things. You can see the care that they put into it. And you know they had endless other things they might have done with that time. So when I'm talking about that in the Anumodana, the kind of giving of blessings and thanks, I mention how their time is worth gold. And so among the merits of what they have done is surely the merit of giving their time. In this culture, in this time, nowadays, I think that might be more profound than just about any monetary size of donation. That they spent such and such amount of time thinking and planning and doing, putting together, maybe driving a long way, arranging, and sometimes it takes a whole day of their time to come to the temple and give some kind of gift. And I find it deeply moving that this is what they chose to do with precious life today. Wow. And I think that will come back to them abundantly, very abundantly. So I mention it now when I talk to them. Or when they're, earning merits for a deceased person, and they want to share the merits with someone who has died. They want that person to have a good rebirth. They're worried about them maybe, or they're just doing their duty. When I explain it to children especially, I'll talk about all the merits and the goodness of what they've done, maybe taking precepts and reciting words of the Buddha and giving to the Sangha. And I say it's like a pile of gold right here in the middle of the room. We're going to try to give to this person who has departed. I mention as part of that pile of treasure that we're giving to the deceased person, their efforts, their energy, their time. Has to be worth a lot. The service that they have done in the name of their deceased relative and for the Sangha. So then we, say the recitation of giving over all of those merits to the deceased person and in hopes of giving them a more beautiful state. The background to that, by the way, is that the deceased person, if they're in a low, woeful realm, like a ghost realm, would become aware that people are thinking of them, honoring them, and would come and rejoice. And the rejoicing actually is not in harmony with that low place. So they would have to be broken free of the low place. So I have a number of thoughts I want to add. So the Buddha talked about 6 things that are unsurpassable. So as you can imagine, it's in the Book of Sixes in the Anguttara Nikaya 6.30. Mendicants, these 6 things are unsurpassable. What 6? The unsurpassable seeing, the unsurpassable listening, the unsurpassable acquisition, the unsurpassable training, unsurpassable service, and unsurpassable recollection. So he talks about kind of a worldly, ordinary way of doing each of these, and then the which is surpassable, and then the unsurpassable version of it. So what is the unsurpassable service? Some people serve an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a householder, or a diverse spectrum of people, or they serve ascetics and Brahmins of wrong view and wrong practice. There is such service. I don't deny it. That service is low, crude, ordinary, ignoble, and pointless. It doesn't lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. Well, it's not useless completely, but it's not, the top. The unsurpassable service is when someone with settled faith and love, sure and devoted, serves a realized one, the Buddha, or their disciple. This is in order to purify sentient beings, to get past sorrow and crying, to make an end of pain and sadness, to discover the system and to realize extinguishment. I don't like that. To realize Nibbana. This is called the unsurpassable service. Such is the unsurpassable service. Sometimes people ask me, sometimes strangers online just kind of cold call me, just write me out of the blue, say something like, well, I think I want to be ordained. How do I connect with monks? Or I'm new to such and such community in such and such place in the United States. I know it's not near you, but how do I find a temple and how do I connect with them? So I just get this kind of question from Western people, Americans particularly, a lot on how do you make a connection with monks, with a temple? And my answer, go and do service. I tell them, go and pick up a broom, go wash some dishes. I tell them, you want to make the place your monastery? Go belong by doing acts of service. Of course, when you're talking about Asian monasteries, it's a lot easier to do than Western monasteries. Western monasteries, you have to make sure you're not doing somebody's job, because if it's somebody's job, they may have an opinion and so on. But, just with that slight little word of caution there, just pitch in, make it yours. I am so accustomed to doing that. I became aware of how very accustomed I am. Wherever I go, the place is my monastery. And, if there's trash, you pick it up. If there's a chair set at a strange angle, you straighten it. If there's water spilled, you wipe it up. Like you make it your monastery anywhere you go. One time I was invited to a conference, and it was a conference of people interested in Buddhism in a city that doesn't have a lot of Buddhist activity. And so I was just a guest invited to give a talk there. I didn't really know these people. I was just invited. They just, were looking for some available monastic. So I went. But I went, this is some conference center. This is not a holy site, a holy location. I walked into the bathroom, and these people, ostensibly Buddhist, supposedly Buddhist, or at least potentially Buddhist, had left a terrible mess in the women's bathroom. Toilet paper everywhere, paper towels on the floor. And I cleaned the bathroom. Here I was, a guest speaker. It's not my job. But I treated it like my monastery. There's a mess, and it's a place where you're immediate. So you clean it up. You just do it. Why would you not? When someone has been in Buddhist circles for a while, and I think particularly in the ordained Sangha for a while, you start to get an eye for people who have that kind of heart, that kind of that readiness to do service for others, for the community. Maybe everybody is tired, but one person sees a carload of people drive up, and everybody else goes to their room and lock their doors. And that one person says, oh, these poor visitors, we're all gone. And then turns around, and instead of taking the quietude that they want, taking the rest that they want, goes and welcomes the visitors. One time there was somebody who was in a monastery I was living at, who was so completely, a young monastic, who was so completely lacking that heart of service, that she got the attitude and idea that I would do that sort of thing because I was somebody who just wanted to talk to the people a lot. So I was just indulging my defilements. Whereas I was feeling near tears inside when I saw those people drive up, but out of compassion for them, instead of going off to my room and enjoying my quietude, escaping into the forest, I turned around and welcomed the guests. It was an act of service, an act of compassion. But some people don't have that kind of heart in this field, in this endeavor, and can't even imagine it, much less give that kind of act of service. Should you always do it? Well, let's go back to the Buddha's advice to Rahula at Ambalataka. Does it bring up wholesome states or unwholesome states? If you're starting to burn out, stop. Stop, full stop. You have to know your own limit. But it's a balance. It's a balance. It's good to have a heart of service. It's good to have that compassion. And good to know the limits. I don't want to give any kind of extreme idea on any side. I'm trying to give the caveats in every direction. But you really can see that some people are fed somewhere in their heart with service to others. And some people, like my poor, that hapless friend of mine who stepped over a man who'd been shot and was dying and did nothing to help him, didn't call for help, didn't help him himself, just kept going because it wasn't his problem. Some people just don't have it. So I think he was the one who talked about washing Ajahn Chah's toe. Anybody know that story? So he thought it was just, I think it was him. It could have been Jack Cornfield now. I don't remember for sure. But there was a Western student of a great elder master, I believe Ajahn Chah, who was kind of disgusted the way the monks would swarm the elder and try to wash his feet. And finally, one day he decided to give in and give it a try. And he managed to get a whole toe because there was a tremendous physical competition with the monks. Monks rushing in, trying to wash the elder's feet. And he got one toe and he got to wash that one toe. And he was uplifted. He was in bliss after getting to wash the elder's toe, and then he got it. There's something to this. There really is something to this business of service. Another account that he gave that further sensitized me to this topic was that he mentioned about how he was living in Thailand. He was a young monk, and somehow it became his job to deal with passports for the other monks in that community. So the foreign monks coming and going had a lot of passport problems, and he was the one who would go to Bangkok and sort it out. So while the others were getting to meditate peacefully for months in the forest, he's stuck in an office doing this paperwork. And he was really unhappy about this. But when they all had an opportunity to meditate, his meditation went deep immediately while the others still struggled. So he asked the teacher, why did that happen? The teacher said, because you're doing service to Sangha. Because you're doing the service to Sangha, then when it's time for you to meditate, you go deep. The others were not. They were just focusing on their meditation all the time. And so that service for Sangha is incredibly powerful. It's not to be underestimated. It's a whole other thing. I'll give a personal example. There was one time I was living a bit too isolated, and I was starting to think of disrobing. And then a friend asked me to host the recitation of the Patimokkha. It would turn out to be the first recitation of the Patimokkha that we're aware of outside of Asia for the Bhikkhunis, Theravada Bhikkhunis. And so that was at my place, and organizing it, that service to the Sangha was so uplifting, and I felt so connected with everybody that my heart was full. And then those thoughts of quitting just seemed like a distant, foolish past idea. It was just gone because I did all of that service, reaching out to them, connecting with them. And then I felt arm in arm with my sisters, even though they were at a distance. So I remember those things, that kind of thing is so important for me, for my life. I get a lot of joy out of serving the lay people, particularly serving by counseling and teaching the Dhamma. I don't even know how somebody, I don't know how somebody does the spiritual life if they don't get to teach and counsel, because it gives me so much joy, so much uplift. It kind of, where things might be, it's like the grease in joint of a machine. You know, it keeps things running smoothly for me to have that uplift to get to do that. I think I'm just going to give one more thought, and then I'm going to read the scripture and be done in 2 minutes. This is a little oddball act of service that I'm going to mention for your amusement and reflection. I don't know where it's found. If someone knows, you can put it in the chat. There was one of these stories that are translated by Venerable Thanissaro, that there was a monk who was a bit of an eccentric, had a bit of a reputation as an eccentric, who, but an elder, who was staying at the place of a very great elder. I don't remember if it was Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mun, or some other great elder. And the younger monks complained that they had not gotten a Dhamma talk from the elder in a long time. And the visiting monk said, "Don't you worry, I will get you a Dhamma talk." And they were all on alms round. They all went on alms round. And so this visiting monk was close behind the great elder. And as they were walking away from the village on alms round, the visitor reached into his alms ball and went crunch, 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 crunch on some alms food as they're walking along. And the elder gives him a look of death. And then that night, the elder gave them a fiery sermon, starting off with, you know, that incident of that terrible lack of respect and so forth. Like, he gave them a wonderful, fiery Dhamma talk. This was an act of service. This is what you call taking one for the team. He took one for the team. That is, his own personal discomfort at the elder being riled up towards him personally. He did it on purpose, just to benefit all the monks in the monastery by getting the elder provoked into giving a talk. So that was just a random, to me, highly amusing account of someone doing service for his fellows. And now that last bit of scripture. So I found a couple of words about service, but there's a whole other, the scripture doesn't often use those particular words. Sometimes we find this concept of helping others, of being benefit to each other, many, many, many ways in the scripture. And I'm just going to mention about where in the Sigalovada Sutta, the Singala Sutta, Digha Nikaya 31, I think, the Buddha gave a lot of good advice, but particularly he talked about bad friends and good friends. And young man, be aware of these 4 good-hearted friends: the helper, the friend who endures in good times and bad, the mentor, and the compassionate friend. The helper can be identified by 4 things: by protecting you when you're vulnerable, and protecting your wealth, being a refuge when you're afraid, and in various tasks providing double what is requested. So these are all kinds of ways of being of service as a good friend. The enduring friend can be identified by 4 things: by telling you their secrets, by guarding your own secrets closely, not abandoning you in a time of misfortune, and even dying for you. A mentor can be identified by 4 things: by restraining you from wrongdoing, guiding you towards good actions, telling you what you ought to know, and showing you the path to heaven. The compassionate friend can be identified by 4 things: by not rejoicing in your misfortune, by delighting in your good fortune, preventing others from speaking badly of you, and encouraging others who praise your good qualities. So these are all very many ways that one can be of service to one's fellows. So with this, I'm going to close. The talk is officially open. I'm going to hang on for, I'm going to check the questions in the chat. Thank you all for being here. If I feel like I've been in service for most of my life and enjoyed it, what do you do to remind yourself when you burn out and your ego says, "What about me?" I think I probably addressed that in talking about wholesome states versus unwholesome states. Look for ways of being of service that feed your heart, that are that you find very beautiful. It's like if you were weightlifting and you lifted some weight that was too much and you strained your muscle, you must not use that particular muscle. So be careful in your giving, in your acts of service, that you're not touching that area that's so hurt and burned out, but rather that you find other ways that are still very wholesome and uplifting for you. You know, I forgot one of the most important statements in the whole set of my notes, which was one of the benefits of being of service is that the joy and uplift that you get from it leading to samadhi. Like, how could I miss that in my notes? To peace, to tranquility, even deeper meditation. My goodness, I missed that. Okay, let's see. Okay, are we done?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for being here.